Check, check, check. Check, 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 check. Uh-oh, gotta see. Okay, gonna get started in a second. Sorry, I had to sneeze. Hi. Get that music lowered a little bit. Hi friends, I'm Jenn Vega. Welcome back to Attack the Pantry. This stream is a deep dive into the ingredients, cooking techniques, and recipes to help you cook for yourself during quarantine and, well, the rest of your adult life. Last time we talked about tuna, watercress, and pie crust. Hi Lucius! Great to see ya. That's a good new emoji in the chat. I didn't know we had that. We have so many new emoji in here. Yee! I love it. So, yeah, last time talked about tuna, watercress, and pie crust. You can watch all the clips here on my channel if you click on the link that says videos. Twitch deletes these after every 2 weeks, so I'm uploading everything else to the archive at youtube.com/JENNDLV. Make sure to subscribe there, because I'm uploading a bunch of stuff there all the time now. Yeah. So, if you're new to the stream, I also host another stream on Sundays called Zine Dreams, and this past Sunday we looked at Put an Egg on It, issue number 13. My friends Carol and K-Pan made a zine called Cat Calls, And we also took a look at the Black Lives Matter protest handbook that was distributed at New York City Hall. Business, if you have an Amazon Prime account, you can connect it to Twitch and gift it to your favorite creators, and hopefully one of them is me sometimes. But they re-up every month, so you get a free month to get a little crown next to your name in Twitch chat. It's real cute. But yeah, lots of really good links below. My Patreon, Etsy, all that stuff. Those are ways to support me and keep my stream going. It's been great. On Monday, we released skate video number 18. I actually am pretty far ahead. Like, I'm actually just filming, like, skate video 28, so I'm, like, 10 ahead. But when we get to 25, there's going to be this fun sort of montage of, like, my progress so far. I feel like I've made a lot of progress. It doesn't look like much to the to somebody who doesn't skateboard, but, like, there are just little incremental changes that you make that feel better on the board. But anyway, you'll see that when it goes up in a couple weeks. Last week, my podcast, Fun City, published every day. People have been saying, like, that's not one episode. It was, like, 5 episodes. But it's kind of the perfect time to catch up on all 20 because just yesterday, we started recording our mini-series called Still Fleet because, we can't really go into the studio right now and record the high-quality podcast that we want to make. So we're trying out a distributed podcast with a new game that is unreleased called Still Fleet. I really, really, really can't wait to introduce you to my character, Marcus, who is a lizard person. But you'll have to wait a couple weeks before you get to hear that first episode. It was a really fun adventure last night. We will talk about it after it comes out. But this week on Patreon, I posted about making your own mochi, a replay of an interview I did on Critical Bits. I talked to Shannon for a while about all these creative projects and kind of how we deal with quarantine and race and all these things. Lots of things. I also shared a recipe for strawberry mostarda, which I showed off here on the stream a couple weeks ago. And then also just some administrative changes about the tiers on Patreon. Like, I had a $1 tier called Cheesehead, but I merged it with everything else because literally no one was subscribing to it. So those are just some things you can read about if you are a patron on my Patreon. Second episode of Culinary Word of the Day is going out tomorrow, or technically tonight at 12:01 a.m. If you really, really want to wait for it. But make sure you're following the Twitter. It is Culinary WOTD. And you can submit a word in the form that is pinned to the top of the page. So far, we've gotten words like tangzong and lovage. So there's a wide swath of words that you can still submit. You get credit on the episode. And then I started doing this thing where I'll post the episode on Monday, and then Tuesday through Friday, I'll post, like, supporting documents where you can see how that culinary word is used in, like, academic contexts or in articles or even in YouTube videos and music. So it's been really fun doing all this research, and, like, it really tickles my brain, like, and if you listen to Culinary Word of the Day, you may learn crossword puzzle clues, like, won't that help you on the Sunday crossword? Hello. Hi, Martin. But yeah, that's Culinary Word of the Day. Etsy shop is still going. Got lots of cookbooks in there. But, if you don't have monies like me, that's okay. You can just tell people to follow this channel or follow me on social so that, we can have a bigger party when it comes to all the good stuff that we discuss. Let's look at all the stuff you cooked this week. This is fun. I love this. So up first is Martin's fish nacho. I never really thought to combine a fish and nacho, but this looks great because you made a ceviche, right? And then you put it on nacho. I like a crunch anyway. Like most ceviches that I have get served with crunchy chips. So like this is not a far jump. Very good, very good, very yummy, very yummy. Jeff has a report from the garden in Atlanta. Huge haul. These are tomatoes and green beans. Lovely. Lovely, lovely. Yeah, those were fish nachos, yeah. Let's look at it again. Like, you didn't bake the fish on top of it, right? Like, you put the leftover ceviche over the hot, cheesy chips. Yeah. Jeff and Erica also got a waffle iron. Gorgeous. I actually only got my waffle iron last year. So, I haven't gone crazy with it. Like, I got it because, I think we were doing, like, a pop-up, and we were doing waffle bites of something. Like, we were using the little waffle square as, like, a holder for, like, topping. We did, like, savory, like, nacho waffle. You can nacho anything. This is Dylan's breakfast. It's very lovely. I'll move it, actually. Got a salad with feta cheese, bacon, egg, and toast with butter. Looks good. Yum. We've got Lucius's squid. Great. I need to cook more squid. I only know how to cook squid one way, or two ways, which is deep fried and adobo style with the ink. But I don't prefer it that way. I do like it crispy. And then more from Lucius here. We got the salmon. I like the way you cut the leeks. It's great. And tomato and basil and parm, right? Yum. And then we got our friend Laika, who is my neighbor, eating a cat food bun. So my friend Kate has a pop-up or online shop where you can buy buns, like baked buns. And so she's been doing like vegetarian, like dandan flavor, mushroom barbecue. And then she made one special bun for her cat, Laika, which has the cat food in it. And she like texted me, warning, this was baked separately from all the other buns. I was like, yeah, dude. This is, my brother made some okonomiyaki. This looks like restaurant level okonomiyaki. Very nice. It's missing the bonito flakes though. With nice crunchies on top. Do love a crunchy. Crunchy furikake. JV sent over these green beans with ground pork. Really haven't had this classic in a long time. Yum. Yeah, special bun for cat. Alright. Let's see. What did I do this week? So, last week I went to my first, like, socially distanced rally in March. I've been mostly abstaining because I'm, you know, really immunocompromised. Like, I'm not able to participate as much. But I went to my first one, which was confronting 4th of July, which is something I feel pretty strongly about. Like, I didn't celebrate 4th of July this year because, A, it's upsetting. Like, it's, like, stands for, you know, really old history and laws, and I decided not to grill. I usually grill all weekend during the 4th of July, but I just didn't really feel it was appropriate. I ate barbecue by Black Chefs, which was awesome. And at the rally, there was this parrot of dissent. Parrot cancels 4th of July. Pretty good, pretty good. Yeah, seriously. Okay, going back to my friend Kate. So she's not doing online bun delivery this week because she's doing a pop-up at Getaway in Greenpoint. So online, you can reserve a spot to pick up these zrazi. So zrazi is like European, like Eastern European bun. It's like soft pierogi, like bun outside with dill, egg, and potato on the inside. It is soft and delicious, and it comes with a side of chipotle labna. So I've already taste tested them. They're delicious. I put in an order for another on Saturday. So it's at Getaway in Greenpoint. You can reserve a slot and buy some of, like, a couple of these for $7. And they're really filling and delicious. I love being neighbors with Kate. It's the best. She also gave me the last of her barbecue mushroom and dandan flavored buns. This is a cross-section of one of them. Yes. And for protein, she uses, like, cashews and water chestnut, which is delicious. Last week, I made some longanisa gumbo. So longanisa is a Filipino sweet sausage, so I've just swapped it in for the andouille. So it's less smoky, but a little more caramelized, and I don't know, I really enjoyed it. I dumped like half a bottle of hot sauce in there too, so it's quite spicy. But, you know, you got the rice and my adobo collards to, like, calm it down. That was my dinner the other night. What else? When I went strawberry picking with Kate and Anthony, we went to the farm stand at Grieg, and I picked up this tube of venison liverwurst. And I grew up with liverwurst. My dad, like, would buy these tiny brown cans, and we would just have it with warm toast. So I've made, like, a version of a banh mi. This is, like, not a true banh mi because, A, it's a hot dog bun because I'm trying to use them up instead of a baguette. And we don't have pickled daikon, but I do have kimchi and shredded carrot in there with parsley instead of cilantro. Honestly, cilantro would have been much better, or basil would have been much better, but, you know, sufficed for lunch. This is one way to eat liver products. Lots of crunch and lots of pickle. Yum. I know, don't you wish you had a bun neighbor? No, the parrot did not say anything. I wish it did. It was mostly just observing. And then finally, this was real fun. So I'm testing someone's cookbook, and one of the recipes is for corn slushy. So you make, like, a simple syrup, lightly cook some sweet corn, freeze it, and then crush it the next day in a blender, and you get like a corn dessert, and it's delicious. It was so good. We should have more corn ice desserts, for sure. So that's what I was up to this week. How is everybody in the chat? Oh, you may have heard me sneezing before I came on. My allergies are, you know, kicking up. It's a little damp out there in New York. It's quite hot, you know, it's like 85, 90-ish outside, but it just rained, so hopefully it'll cool down. Oh, you went to the farmer's market. What did you pick up? You picked up that basil plant? What else did you get? Lucius, you're like my on-the-ground, like, market report. I didn't get to go to the farmer's market this weekend because I had, you know, too many things, and so I didn't really need anything this week. But I'll probably get some fresh vegetables on Sunday. And Martin's picking up his CSA tonight, right? Do you know what you're expecting at your CSA? Oh, you got some tomatoes, watercress, spinach. Cherries are in season. Hell yeah. Did you happen to see any of those peachy ones, like the Rainier cherries? Those are more of a Seattle thing, but sometimes they pop up here at our farmer's market. Oh, same where your parents live? They have to finish their walks by 10 a.m. Oh, dang, that's hot. All right, we have 2 subjects today. I kind of decided we didn't really need a third because these 2 are pretty big and we can talk about them for a long time. So we're going to talk about charcuterie and tomatoes. Oh, So in your CSA, you're getting a squash and gypsy pepper. I don't know what a gypsy pepper is. But I've heard that people are less, like, not really naming things gypsy because it's not an appropriate word. I don't know. There was some argument about it. Oh, you saw some light-colored cherries, but they weren't Rainier. Cool. Yeah, I have an ice cream recipe that I use with Rainier cherries, and I love them. I do like a creamy custard base with rum and Rainier cherries. Yeah, Rainier cherry ice cream. All right, well, let's get to our two big subjects. So we're going to talk about charcuterie at the request of Martin. This is a big subject, and I love it, and I've written about it. I've written extensively about charcuterie. So, charcuterie, or cured meats, comes from French, char, like the word chair, C-H-A-A-I-R, means meat, char means meat, and cuit means cooked. So this is a branch of cooking devoted to prepared meat products like bacon, ham, sausage, terrines, galantines, ballotine, pate, confit, and most of it is primarily pork, but we will get to some exceptions. In the kitchen, when it comes to like restaurant layout, you know how there's a head chef or an executive chef, a sous chef, and then there are different parts of the kitchen that kind of put together every dish. And so one of the stations is called garde-manger, which is sort of the charcuterie person. They do all of the cold prep. So if you order a cheese board or a charcuterie board or a salad or anything that has to do with like pickled items, that is usually coming from the garde-manger station. So like the different stations are like garde-manger, sous chef, fryer. They might separate meat and vegetable prep on the stove tops. There are pastry chefs, and so garde-manger is the, cold prep. And so I've mostly been a garde-manger when it comes to restaurant roles, because this is my specialty. So charcuterie was originally intended as a way to preserve meat before the advent of refrigeration. And so today, all of those flavors come from that long preservation process. And so the big difference, let me illustrate it like this. So there's a difference between like roasted deli meats or prepared deli meats and charcuterie. So roasted deli meats like roast beef, you salt that. At most, you'll be curing it overnight to get a lot of the moisture out of it. Like you do a salt rub, leave it in the fridge overnight to develop a crust, and then you roast that for a couple of hours. Compared to bresaola, which is a cured beef that is salted and then cured out of the refrigeration for months. So the difference is you're roasting for a couple hours versus salt curing for a bunch of months. And then the texture is completely different. So they're both sliceable, but the roast beef is, much more moist, and the cured one is like, dried, dried and salty. Like it's it won't break apart. Like you don't see the striation anymore. Like all that moisture gets sucked out, and what's left is sort of the fat marbling, which is quite beautiful. And so charcuterie in general is divided into several categories. We'll briefly go over most of them. I know I'm going to miss some, but I'll do my best. But the basics are forcemeat, sausage, emulsified sausage, pate, terrine, galantine, roulade, salt-cured / brined, and then fermented sausage. Are there any ones that you are particularly interested in today? And I can start with those. But I can just, also just start from the beginning. Okay, so forcemeat is used in charcuterie, but it's also can be its own thing. So think of it like stuffing. Like if we were stuffing a pork loin with like a sausage, that's a forcemeat of sausage. So if we were stuffing a chicken with like cubed apples and like ground pork, that is a forcemeat. Sausage is technically a forcemeat, but forcemeat is without any casing. It's just like the mixture. When we get into sausage, we are putting it into casing, like the intestine casing. So if you ever want to get into making your own sausage, it's quite an adventure. You can ask butchers for it, or you can order it online, and they come in a little plastic container of salt, and it's like all dried up. So what you do is you soak the sausage casing in water for a day so that it becomes pliable again, and then you get a sausage stuffer and thread it through, and then you're able to stuff sausage into it. I've tried to do this like DIY without buying an attachment. The most common way you will stuff sausage these days is to get an attachment for your KitchenAid machine. And I refuse to buy it. It's like $30. And I tried to develop this like suction system with like 2-liter bottles, and like I wish I downloaded the photo, because I had this really great photo of my two like 6-foot-tall shirtless roommates, like had their hands covered in meat and like trying to push this thing into sausage stuffing. It was very funny. Very, very funny. Oh, where does salumi fit in? This is an excellent, excellent question. So, salami is fermented and air-dried sausage. It is a type of salumi. So, salumi is a class of Italian cured meats that are mostly pork, but still includes beef products like bresaola. So, think of salumi as like a class of things within like charcuterie. So charcuterie is French, salumi is Italian, and most deal with pork, but you know, there are exceptions. It's mostly the practice of dry curing things with salt. So going back to sausage, so fresh sausage, you can, you put in a casing. There is a ratio of fat to ground meat. There's a whole science about how well you grind it. Some people grind their meat twice. You put in aromatics, and then you put it, when you get it into the casing, you twist off, the links, and prick it with needles to let out any fat as it cooks. And then you kind of air dry it so that the skin, sort of dries out and settles onto the sausage, and it will kind of create that casing. And then you cook them. There's not much curing when it comes to that. But there is another level within sausages called the emulsified sausage. And if you remember what emulsification is, it is mixtures that don't typically go together. So the prime example of that is oil and vinegar make a vinaigrette if you shake it. Otherwise, if you just put oil and vinegar in a glass without shaking it, they just sort of separate. It doesn't necessarily work that way in sausage, but we're borrowing that thought of emulsification. So we're blending two different substances together, and one is floating in the other. And in this case, it is that fat is floating in the ground meat structure of the sausage. So a big example of emulsified sausage is a hot dog. Yeah. So moving on from there, so we've talked about force meat and sausage and emulsified sausage. The next type of charcuterie is pates. And so there are two styles of pate, and that is country and mousse. So country is more sausage-like. Instead of having a casing, it is then put in a loaf pan and covered with duck fat or pork fat. Some kind of fat or aspic. Aspic is a meat gelatin layer, so that the pate is not exposed to air. Because as soon as like offal, like liver pate, kidney pate, that kind of stuff is exposed to air, it starts to oxidize and change color. And so that's why you'll see in a lot of pate loaves either an aspic or a fat layer. That is to reduce the amount of oxygen that is touching the pate. So country pates, those are mostly French, I would say. They're a little more rustic, that you can see the pieces of the meat in it. So sometimes it'll be ground pork with chunks of like cooked rabbit, chunks of apricot. When you slice through, you can visibly see like what parts are in it. They're quite beautiful, actually. And the other type of pate is the mousse, like foie gras mousse or liver mousse or chicken liver mousse. Those are blended to a very, very smooth texture. You can also have like truffle mousse. They also will have a layer of fat, aspic, or even butter. I actually use a layer of butter on my chicken liver terrines. I really like it. Liverwurst also falls into this category, but liverwurst is soft and piped into a plastic tube and sealed like a sausage. Like it'll look like a Jimmy Dean like sausage loaf, but you cut off the end and it's scoopable from in there. One Spanish charcuterie that is sort of, I don't know, between a lot of these things. So it's between a pate and between a sausage. It's called Nduja. You may have seen it at the shop before. It's spelled N apostrophe D-U-J-A, Nduja, and it's a spreadable chorizo. So it technically is a pate, but also counts as like a chorizo sausage. So you can see how there's some weird, like some products, they're not weird, they're delicious, but products that kind of sit between categories. So charcuterie now, like I think that a lot of people who are making it are like bucking against the very strict like French classical techniques and experimenting with new animals, new meats, new materials, and that brings me to terrines, which are not necessarily meat-based. So a terrine is building off the idea of a pate. So pate is like a loaf situation. Terrine is a pressed loaf situation. And sometimes it'll be pate, cheese, and then a vegetable pressed together, like kind of, you know, like a appetizer sandwich that is spreadable on toast and crackers. I forgot that I have a book all about terrines. Lucius has a question: is Spam a pate? Technically, yes, Spam is a pate, but it is stored in a tin, and it's fully cooked, so you can eat it as is, you know. But it's not as spreadable as pates are typically understood to be. I would say that Spam is more on the side of a country pate. Yes, it is a pineapple top. Thank you for noticing. How are you? Hold on one second. I want to go get my terrine book and show you the differences between them. Let me put up a screen for you here. So this is by Stéphane Renaud. It's called Terrine. It's on Phaidon, which is the art book publisher. I have so many Phaidon books. I always check if they have a sale, and we'll buy like 4 or 5 at a time during the holidays. But this book is all about terrines, which, if you missed it, is sort of a category of charcuterie, which is very close to pate, but really changes and challenges the ingredients that you can layer and press. So you can see that I want to try so many things from this book, so we'll look at a few of them. So we have this is one of my favorites that I actually made. Carrot, cumin, and sesame terrine. So that is thinly sliced carrots, and then an egg is poured over it. and then that is cooked in a loaf pan in a bain-marie. So bain-marie is a water bath for a couple hours, and then when you unloaf it, you can slice it, and it becomes this like carrot egg pate thing. So terrines, we could go crazy on terrines another time, but I just want to show you a few examples. Actually, next week we can go crazy on terrines. Where is it? I want to show you a meat one. There's lots of cheese and vegetable ones in this. Here. Foie gras, sauterne, and smoked duck breast terrine. There you go. That one's more of a log than a loaf. And then we have foie gras terrine in two different shapes. So that one's like a dome, and then that one's like the traditional like mousse loaf. And this is also another traditional way to serve terrines, which is in a ramekin. And you can see there's a thin layer of aspic on top that I was talking about. And then other types, like dessert types. There's a camembert apple multigrain bread terrine. And then strawberry fresh mint terrine. Tarte tatin, citrus fruit terrine. These all play with gelatins, if you're not afraid of gelatin. Gorgeous. But yeah, terrine is a class of charcuterie. Yeah, Fadon books are pretty, huh? We are talking about charcuterie and tomatoes. So we're in the middle of charcuterie, which are cured meats. So we're at terrine. How many of you have ever had a galantine? Do you know what a galantine is? This is actually something that I didn't know that it was sort of Filipino, but not technically. I mean, I don't know. Have you ever had a galantine? Has anyone ever had a galantine? Do you know what it is? Not the Parks and Recreation Galentine's Day, which I thought was hilarious, a great play on words. So galantine is where the idea of a turducken comes from. So it's a traditional deboned chicken. So you have the whole carcass of a chicken. Haha, February 14th. It's February 15th, thank you. So you take a chicken, debone it, and then stuff it with ground pork. You roll it up and sew it and roast that. And then when you slice it, it's a ring of chicken with stuffed meat on the inside. So that is a galantine. Yeah. Galantine and roulade are sort of in the same class. And in the Philippines, we have a dish called embutido, which is pork, like ground pork, and then we wrap like a stuffing of like raisins and like vegetables and like a hard-boiled egg in the middle, and then roll that up, and then you cook that in a bain-marie again, like, so bain-marie is like the water bath, and then cool it down, and then when you're able to slice it, there's like egg in the middle. So it's like ring of pork and then egg in the middle. Embutido. I'm actually testing a recipe for that this weekend, which is exciting. So yeah, that's a whole nother class. So turducken isn't just like a meme. That comes from something, and that dish is galantine. Yeah. But you can go crazy with it, you know. You can stuff a pork loin with apples and bacon. You can stuff a beef. You can stuff pretty much any big roasted meat you can turn into a sheet. I don't know if you've ever tried to do this, but if you have like a whole sheet of something, you basically cut a spiral in it, and then you can unroll it and then start stuffing it with things. Porchetta counts in this category of galantines. If you've ever had porchetta, which is a deboned pork shoulder that is then roasted and then cut into circular pieces. Yeah. Fun. I want to master porchetta. I've never actually made a good one. And then we get to sort of the most familiar section of charcuterie, which is salt-cured, brined meats, and then the fermented sausages. So salt cured and brined are like, you know, the whole legs of pork. So like jamon iberico, jamon serrano, prosciutto, jambon de Bayonne. That's like a new French marketed cured pork leg, jambon de Bayonne. You might see it in the stores now. Oh, so like if you wrap a chicken breast in a slice of ham. Sort of, yes. It's more of like using forcemeat, like the ground meats. But yeah, that's sort of like in the same category, for sure. So cured salted meats. So that is your prosciuttos, your brissolas, your copas. These are large cuts of animal that are salt cured and hung out to dry for a matter of months. That includes, what's the jowl? It includes pancettas. It includes guanciale, whole country hams. So this is different from roasted glazed hams. Like these are legs that are sitting out for months versus being roasted for a couple of hours. And then fermented sausages is where we get into the salumi argument. Those are your soprasadas, your salamis, your chorizos, your wursts. This is, hung salamis. Those are generally called fermented sausages because they're relying on ambient yeast and microbiology, like molds, like helpful white molds to develop the flavor and the texture. And that's sort of the difference between sausages and fresh sausages and hot dogs. You know, you may dry it for a couple days, but it's not the same as being fermented and changed chemically like a fermented sausage or most salamis. I have a couple books here that I wanted to show you. Actually, no, wait. I have an article that I wrote that you can look up. Let's go to the ingredients here. So, I wrote this article on Wine Enthusiast. So, if you go to winemag.com and search for charcuterie, you can find my article. I believe it's here. How to build a charcuterie board like a pro. So, it has both the introduction to all of these items that I'm talking about, plus like some food styling tips if you are interested in that, for the gram. I love writing these sorts of articles for Wine Enthusiasts. I do one a year, which is like a giant guide. And the way that it's sorted is a beginner, an intermediate, and an advanced charcuterie board. And along that spectrum, it also increases in cost, because as you get to the advanced board, those are the more challenging flavors and also more of the expensive meats and rarer to find charcuterie. So let me read you the first paragraph here. And you can read this later on your own time. It's pretty easy to make a restaurant-worthy charcuterie board at home, but what sets it apart from generic deli cold cuts is time, salt, and texture. Factors like fermentation and beneficial molds help charcuterie make charcuterie uniquely delicious. So compare a roast beef, like I said earlier, which can be cooked in hours, to an Italian brissola that's salt-cured for months. So many cultures use salt to preserve foods before the advent of modern refrigeration in the 1950s. Because salt processing dates back to 6000 BC. Romans were the first to standardize pork butchery in trade. France later set the bar for cured meats, thanks in part to a particular respect for the animals and their diets. And then the French turned preserving meat into an art form. And so what started with pork in many cultures, so in French, Italian, and Spanish, it's expanded recently to beef, duck, and lamb. Yes. So that's the introduction there. And I teach you about thank you for sharing the link, Lucius. That's it. Hello there. Welcome to our Twitch stream about food. We're talking about charcuterie. So this is an article I wrote, and we'll look at the boards that are included in the article. So I don't know. I don't remember if that was the intermediate. Okay, no, that was the this is the beginner board. So on the right, we have regular store-bought prosciutto. I believe this one was from Parma. You'll notice at the end of prosciutto names, there are usually like the letters DI, which is from or of, and then Parma, which is the city. So de Parma, prosciutto de Parma is prosciutto from Parma. And so there are several other cities that you might see at the end of that in the store. At the top of the board, we have some dandelion greens, which are bitter and kind of great for standing up to something so fatty. Like when you eat lots of charcuterie, I like to provide like side dishes or like snackies, like cornichon, which are the tiny pickles there at the bottom, or walnuts, to just break up all this texture, because you get really salt bombed when you eat all this. And it's good to just, you know, mix it up a little bit. And so this is sort of the easy to approach charcuterie board. And next, so starting from the right, we have prosciutto, and then we have sopressata, which is the closest to pepperoni, I would say, but it's not technically pepperoni. It doesn't have enough pepper in it to be called pepperoni. And then some regular salami. And then rillette. I didn't talk about rillette, but rillette is sort of like if you take pulled pork and mix it with pork fat, it's now a spreadable pate situation. These are usually served in ramekins or jars. This one is from Three Pigs Pate. They sell this, like, you know, it's slow cooked pork and then mixed in with pork fat, and then you can use it as a spread for sandwiches or your charcuterie board. And then on the far left, we have a pork mousse pate. It is sort of beginner pate, and then you can see there's like a tiny little yellow layer on top. That is the gelatin or the aspic that protects it from oxidizing. Yes. Oh, thank you, Lucius. Remember to follow and subscribe. Yes, totally. Okay, so moving on to the intermediate board. I think at the top left, we've got the jambon de Bayonne. So that's French, like prosciutto. It has a pretty smooth texture. It's not as salty as some of the prosciuttos, but it also still has that like umami taste. You can see some of the rind is a little yellowy, and that is just from the unique mold that cured this leg of ham. In the middle, we have some picante chorizo. It's one of my favorite brands, like Palacios. That is a Spanish brand. We've got a duck mousse pate up in the right corner. So we're going from pork mousse pate to duck truffle pate, which is a little fancier. Got some nice bright mustard. And then some spicy coppa, which is a cured pork. So that one's Italian. Coppa is Italian. Oh, and then you didn't see the rest of the photo here. I'm gonna bring it up. We have water crackers, and then in this ramekin, before we had pork rillette, and then this one is duck rillette, which is shredded roasted duck with its fat, and then served as sort of like a pate spread. Fun. And then zero waste tip. This decorative element here of the green, that is carrot top, which is totally edible. It's a little chewier, so I recommend using it as a pesto, but you can still like use it as like a palate cleansing parsley. I just would not eat it like a salad, you know, unless you were marinating in a lot of vinegar, so break down the fibrousness a little bit. But carrot tops, totally edible if you wash them and keep them. Okay, so going to the advanced charcuterie board. pretty. I sort of did a swoop of balsamic vinegar over the entire board. You can see like it's sort of like rained on a little bit, which is fun. We've got a tuft of sage on the right corner and some dried plum to go with the country pate. And so country pate is pretty easy to find, but I sort of think that people don't go for it as much, so that's why I put it on the advanced board. I think mousse is much easier to digest because you can't see the parts, but don't be afraid of it. It is pork, it is fat, it is pressed together with spices, like mostly nutmeg and garlic. It's pretty great on toast. Give it a chance, you know. On the far right, we have bresaola, which is cured beef, cured Italian beef. In the middle, I don't remember what I picked here. It might have been another kind of coppa. We have some salumi, or the top right there is fermented sausage. That is from, I think, Cremonelli. I think it's their truffle sausage. And then we have jamon iberico, which is nested here on the left side. That is Spanish cured pork leg. Those pigs were eating only black acorns in Iberia. And this tends to be really expensive pork. It's about, I think, $50 to $60 a pound. And typically for one person, you get like a quarter pound. So, yeah, it can get pretty expensive. And in the ramekin is not something that you're able to buy so much unless you live like near a specialty food store like Italy. I made this rabbit rillette. So the first rillette we had was pork, and then we had duck, and then on this board we have rabbit. So it's slow-cooked rabbit that has been blended with butter, and then I have a rosemary and nutmeg butter topping it. It's very rich and delicious. Boy, do I love making charcuterie boards. Can you tell? Can you tell? I love studying this stuff. So much so, actually, that I have a couple books that I want to share with you. So, this one is Chris Cosentino Beginnings. Chris Cosentino is a chef based in San Francisco. His specialty is offal and charcuterie. He makes a lot of other things, but he's a meathead like me. And I love this book. I've been to his restaurant, Coxcomb, in San Francisco several times. It's a place that I will typically go by myself and just order all the things I've never had, which is most things, on his menu. He even autographed it. Jenn, pork is the meat of champions. Isn't that nice? Oh, I didn't know Michael Harlan Turkel did the photos of this. Michael Harlan Turkel did a vinegar book, I think, right? I can fact check that later. But I'll read you some of the beginning here. Where is it? You say salami, I say salumi. Here you go. Goes back to your question there, Lucius. I'm going to read you the introduction here. The Italian word salumi, like charcuterie in French, is an all-encompassing term used for all types of prepared meat products, usually made from pork. People have been curing meat for centuries. Before there was refrigeration, curing was the only way to preserve meat or prevent spoilage. The practice of salting and aging meats is found in all cultures around the world, such as Spain, Italy, England, France, China, and the U.S. South, just to name a few. And each culture has its own distinct flavor profile and salt content. The key to making good salumi is patience, which is hard for a guy like me, and me. My hyperactive tendencies and need for instant gratification make it a big challenge to pack something into a casing and then wait for 3 to 4 months before tasting it to see if I made it right or not. Making salumi has been a lesson in patience, but it comes from an appreciation for science and a love of learning and the old ways of doing things. When I started in Kanto in 2003, I cured meats for the menu in small batches, but they proved so popular it got to a point where I couldn't keep up with the demand. It was then that my salumi company, Boccolone, was born. So Boccolone has a stand in the Ferry Building in San Francisco, and I wish I had downloaded the photo to show you, but you can get for $5 a meat cone. You know how you like walk around a boardwalk with an ice cream cone? You can walk around with a snacky meat cone. It's a cardboard cone, and they layer in all of these, a sampler of salumi that you can try that they've cured themselves. It's really fun. Yes, country ham from the U.S. South. A restaurant called Momofuku Sambar here in New York City has an extensive country ham menu, from like Benton's to I don't know the other brands, but I've had a Benton ham leg in my home before, and it was very heavy. Okay, so I went over the categories of charcuterie before, but as a refresher, again, here in this book, we have fresh sausages, and then also a little thing called crepinettes. Have you ever seen a crepinette? It is a pork patty that is wrapped in the intestine still, but shaped like a hamburger. So it's kind of like a sausage burger-ish, but smaller, crepinette. It still has to be cooked. That's the thing about fresh sausage. It still needs to be cooked. And then we have cured to cook salumi, which is pancetta and guanciale. These are pork pieces that are cured but still need to be fried off. Like bacon counts here too. And then we get to cured salumis. So there's all sorts here. We have sopressata, number 1 down here. Induja, which I mentioned earlier, the cured chorizo spread. Prosciutto, number 3 down here. Lonza, number 4. Similar in both taste and texture to prosciutto, lonza is the back loin that is cured in salt and fennel and air dried. Slice it thinly and put in a sandwich. Oh, I will. Thank you. I will. Number 5 here in the middle is lardo, which is cured back fat. Needs to be sliced very thinly. I tried to chew a piece of lardo and it was not pleasant. Yeah. This is also known as prosciutto bianco. It's cured and seasoned pork back fat, but don't let that scare you away. It is creamy, delicate, and flavorful. It is great served on a warm crostino. At Encanto, I serve it with Asian pears. Oh, also good with nectarine and figs. That sounds great. We have orange and wild fennel salami down here. Capicolo. This is from the eye of the big pork shoulder. That's number 7, so that's this one. That one, Capicolo. Chiesculo. This is the northern cousin of Induja. It is soft and creamy, not spreadable. We pack ours with porcini mushrooms to give the salami a huge boost of umami. That's number 8 here. Salami papato, number 9. Medium grind salami seasoned with 3 specialty varieties of peppercorn. Yum. Number 10, pancetta piana. Dry cured skin on pork belly seasoned with black pepper and rosemary. It looks like bacon, like that one. Then finally, brown sugar and fennel salami. Coarsely ground salami, assertive fennel flavor with whole fennel seeds. Brown sugar leaves notes of caramel and molasses. Yum! That one. Yum! This book is great. Then we have a class of cooked salamis, and he lumps pate in there, some of the pates. Because some pates need to be baked in the bain-marie, and some don't. So we have prosciutto cotto, mortadella, cotticino, sanguinaccio, ciccioli, pate de campagna, porchetta di testa, coppa di testa. Yes, I've had all of these. Mortadella is cured in a sense that it is an emulsified sausage. So it has some level of salt that does consider it cured, yes. but it's not hung dry like the other salumi are. Then he has advice about building a meat platter. I think we have differing opinions on style, but either way, get it on a board and eat it. That's basically it, right? And just know the difference between salumi and cured to cook salumi. Like pancetta, bacon, and guanciale need to be fried. Everything else pretty much can be eaten raw because it's been cured long enough. But this is a great book. This is Chris Cosentino's Beginnings. The other book that I rely on a lot when I make any charcuterie is Michael Ruhlman's Charcuterie with Brian Poulsen. I probably have brought this up several times with y'all. But not only is this book about charcuterie, but it's also about like smoking, fish, and making brines, and I just learn a lot, and I'm constantly still learning a lot from this book. And this is where a digital scale comes in handy. If you're gonna start making charcuterie at home, this is where you sort of need to be precise. Using measuring cups and like measuring spoons is not enough because you need to be scaling up and down mathematically by weight. Because sometimes you'll get a recipe to cure meat and it'll have everything listed in grams, and it'll say I need 3 pounds of ground pork, but the store only sells like 4-pound packs, and so you have to be able to scale that up mathematically with grams. You can't really scale that well with cups and measuring spoons. So there's lots of like math when it comes to charcuterie here. And I want to see if I can find some of my notes, but I write a lot of the measurements when I'm scaling down in the margins in pencil, in case that I need to do that measurement again. But yeah, there's a basic dry cure, and this is where I learned about pink salt. So nitrate pink curing salt is very different from Himalayan pink salt. So I have some here. It is fine grain, and you usually buy them in like pound or 2-pound packs, and you literally, per batch of charcuterie, you're only using like a 1/4 teaspoon. So this lasts forever if you do buy it. I've actually given away like a cup to some of my friends. Like I gave Triss a cup, I think I gave Emily a cup, and all of us still have a lot of this stuff left. But basically the pink salt is what makes fermented curing possible. This is what makes salami possible. The nitrates that you find also in wine, this is what makes it not turn into vinegar, you know? This allows it to be a safe environment for bacteria to grow and to cure the meat. And so do not confuse nitrate curing pink salt with Himalayan salt or pink Hawaiian Alea salt. Those are completely different and for different things. Himalayan and Alea salt are finishing salts. They don't have the chemical properties of this nitrate salt. And they're bigger grain, so it won't mix into the meat as well. That's why it's so fine. So I've made the fresh bacon from this book. I've made the guanciale from this book. Oh my god, the guanciale I cured in my closet. It was the only temperature controlled place because in New York it gets so hot. The closet was the only place that I could keep it. I'm such a dork. One of my other favorite recipes in here is fennel cured salmon. Like, we can talk about cured fish another stream, but it's in this charcuterie book, which is wonderful. But yeah, love this book. Highly recommend. I know, yes. My jackets did not smell like meat, thank you. Yeah, guanciale cave. Well, it was at my old apartment, not my current apartment. Yeah. So that's charcuterie. Does anyone have any questions about charcuterie before we move on to tomatoes? I spoke for an hour about charcuterie, guys. I could go on. Like, each of those categories is worthy of its own stream. Like, I could talk about terrines all next week. Yeah, let's talk about terrines next week. I'm gonna write that down. Terrines. Let's see. I have a list of charcuterie here. Maybe tell me ones that you've never had. So there's prosciutto, prosciutto di Parma, prosciutto di San Daniele. So San Daniele and Parma are two different cities. Speck. Speck is a smoked prosciutto, which is so good. We have culatello, which is the rear end of a pork, but still cured like a prosciutto. Capicola or copa. Bresaola is the cured beef one. Codicino is like a breakfast sausage. Guanciale, lardo, lonza, loncino. Mortadella. I like mortadella. I have a recipe that I worked on called metadella, where I made sort of crepinettes, but had pieces of mortadella floating in it, because mortadella has pieces of ham and pistachio and other things floating in it, and I flipped it around like metadella. Bresaola, Bresaola, bresaola. And that is different from braciole. So braciole is a pounded piece of steak that you wrap asparagus around, or you can wrap other things inside of it. So braciole is different from bresaola. Yeah. Pancetta, salami, Genoa salami, sopressata. I've never had ciasculo. I don't know what ciasculo is. Let's look that up. Ciasculo, a smoked and dry cured sausage made from pork meat and fat cut from the shoulder and belly, spiced with black pepper and garlic and white wine. Yum. So I have a lot of charcuterie brands that I like to pay attention to. Bologna is in there too. Bologna is an emulsified sausage, I would say. Some of my favorite charcuterie brands are like Three Pigs. So Three Pigs Pate, that's more of like a French brand. D'Artagnan is a huge provider of pate and foie gras and duck confit products. American-based, we have Olympia Provisions. That one is based in Portland, Oregon. They are so good at what they do. Locally here in Brooklyn, we have the Meat Hook. They don't really do cured, but they do cured to cook, which is sausages. They have really fun flavors of sausages at the Meat Hook, and their own bacon and pates. I think I got a copa de testa from them once, which is head cheese. My favorite way to eat head cheese, it does sound scary, but if you slice it super, super thin and warm it in the oven at like 300 degrees for like 5 minutes, you finish it with like fennel seed and fennel pollen, and it is a delicious appetizer with toast. What else? What are other brands? La Querecia, which is the Spanish brand. They do chorizos and jamón de ibérico. What else? I don't know. There are lots of charcuterie brands that I like, but you can ask me more about that later. I've spoken enough about charcuterie. Oh, Fatted Calf in Northern California. Yes, they absolutely do kind of California-style French butchery. So I've seen crepinettes there at Fatted Calf. Sausage and bacon and all that. Yeah, Iberico is very interesting. I actually took a master class in learning how to carve jamón ibérico. It is very complicated, but I learned from like a master cortadero, which is the word for a cutter in Spanish, like a jamón cortadero. A cortadero de jamón, cutter of pork. But if I forget the name, it's like Dehesa, I think, is the brand of jamon iberico. They actually have a cam. So when you buy a ham leg from them, you can scan this barcode and look at where the pig grew up and like all the acorns that it ate and the patch of land that it lived on. Like they're really like showing you, you know, every stage of the process, because that's why a lot of these companies or like products have name protection, like DOC, AOC, official, you know, titles. Like champagne is only allowed to be made in Champagne, France, like that kind of stuff. We can talk about that another time. But yes, I love jamon iberico. Yeah, impressive provenance, absolutely. That I think provenance is important, but also like not possible for every single product, because it gets expensive, especially with importing now. Like I think we're gonna take a hit on imported goods very soon. They've gone up in price already, and they're gonna get even more expensive as travel bans start to happen, which is pretty scary. But oh yes, andouille sausage is a great one too. That is in the middle between a fresh and an emulsified sausage. It's very good. I could have used some in my gumbo last night. Well, let's move on to tomatoes. So, technically tomatoes. Look at that tomato. I got a tomate. Tomato is the edible, often red berry of the plant Solanum lycopersicum, commonly known as the tomato plant. The word tomato comes from the Spanish tomate, which in turn comes from a Nahuatl word, tomatl, meaning the swelling fruit. The native Mexican tomatillo is tomate in Nahuatl, and it means fat water, or fat thing. I love that, fat water. When Aztecs started to cultivate the fruit to be larger, sweeter, and red, they called the new species xitomatl, or jitomates, plump with navel, or fat water with a navel. The scientific species epithet lycopersicum is interpreted literally from Latin in 1753 as a wolf peach, where wolf is lyco and peach is persicum. Wolf peach. Why would it be called a wolf peach, though? I know! So botanically, a tomato is a fruit, a berry consisting of the ovary together with its seeds of a flowering plant. However, the tomato is considered a culinary vegetable because it has a much lower sugar content than its culinary fruits, and it's typically served as part of a salad or main course of a meal rather than as dessert. Though I will argue that tomato ice cream sounds delicious. So, the wild ancestor of the tomato is native to Western South America. These wild versions were the size of peas. They were very, very small. Spanish people first introduced tomatoes to Europe when they became used in Spanish and Italian food. Great. So, in France and in Northern Europe, the tomato was initially grown as an ornamental plant. It was regarded with suspicion because botanists recognized it as a nightshade. Technically, a tomato is poisonous and the cousin of a belladonna. So you are not supposed to eat any of the rest of the tomato plant, only the tomato fruit. Yes. So the leaves and the immature fruit contain tomatine, which in large quantities can be toxic. However, the ripe fruit contains no tomatine, so rest easy. The Spanish conquistador, Hernán Cortés, may have been the first to transfer the small yellow tomatoes to Europe after he captured the Aztec city of Tenochtitlan, now Mexico City, in 1521. Although Christopher Columbus may have taken them back as early as 1493. Boo to him, also, by the way. Down with all the Columbus statues. Oh, Martin, you've had tomato ice cream? Do you remember where? That's dope. So, the earliest discussion of the tomato in European literature appears in an herbal written thing in 1544 by Pietro Andrea Mattioli, an Italian physicist and botanist, who suggested that a new type of eggplant had been brought to Italy that was blood red or golden color with mature when mature and could be divided into segments eaten like an eggplant, though they are nothing like each other. But this explains, though, that why tomatoes and eggplants are sort of treated similarly in Italian cuisine. So seasoned with salt and pepper and olive oil. Roasted, sun-dried. Like those are all Italian treatments of both eggplant and tomato. Crazy. So it was not until 10 years later that tomatoes were named in print by Mattioli as pomi d'oro, or golden apples. And that's where the type pomodoro comes from. Pomi, golden. Pomi is apple, and d'oro is golden, so golden apples. So tomatoes were not meant to be this red. They were originally yellowish orange. So after the Spanish colonization of the Americas, they distributed tomato throughout their colonies in the Caribbean. They also took it to the Philippines in the 1500s, and it spread to Asia from there. And after that is when they brought it to Europe. It grew easily in Mediterranean climates, and cultivation began in the 1540s. Yes. In the Philippines, it doesn't really thrive as well. The tomatoes there are more orange, blue, green, and don't have that signature red color. And this is sort of gives way to where banana ketchup comes from. So in the 50s, when World War II is when World War II was happening, ketchup was brought into the Philippines, but they don't really have like red tomatoes. Oh, so instead, they use bananas, and it actually tastes pretty similar. You can Google recipes for banana ketchup if you want. So that poor taste, like that mealiness, these red tomatoes, this lack of sugar in the modern garden comes from trying to breed tomatoes to being uniformly red. So we've totally messed with nature here. There are certainly some breeds of red tomato that are delicious, but a lot of the commercially made and genetically modified tomatoes just don't really have that much flavor. My favorite tomato experience was going to this restaurant in Barcelona. I ordered the pan con tomate, or pa am tomaquet, which is tomato toast. It sounds so stupid easy, but in Spain it is a million times better because the tomatoes are just so amazing. Like when you touch them, they are bursting with juice. And so all they do is they take like a grilled piece of bread and rub a piece of raw garlic so you get that little bit of spiciness on the surface of the bread. And then they just take a tomato, cut it in half, and smash it in there. And they didn't even chop it. It just fell apart into the bread. And then it's dressed with olive oil and some sea salt. And it was my favorite tomato dish I've ever had in my life. And can't really do that here with our grocery store tomatoes. But if you do get heirloom tomatoes from the farmer's market, or super farm fresh ones, store them on the counter upside down, so they don't respirate as much, and then push them to the ripest until they're bursting, and then have this tomato toast, and it is insane. So tomatoes are best kept unwashed at room temperature and out of direct sunlight. It's not recommended to refrigerate them because it sort of dampens the flavor. And yeah, it's just not as good. Storing them stem side down, like I said, you can prolong the shelf life and keep them from rotting too quickly. But you should check it every other day in the at the bottom of the tomato to make the top of the tomato, the stem side, make sure that it's not growing any blue or white mold. Yeah. And then tomatoes that are not quite ripe yet, you can keep them in paper bags until they are ripe on the countertop. And so, if you come into a case of tomatoes, sometimes I have this problem. I've somehow have this case of tomatoes. They're really easy to preserve. They can be preserved whole, sliced, crushed as tomato sauce, or reduced into a tomato paste. You can even dehydrate them into sheets for camping. Yeah, I wrote a guide. It hasn't been published yet, but I wrote a guide to canning, and so canning is home canning, pressure canning is a way that you can preserve tomatoes. Tomatoes are 95% water, contain 4% carbohydrates, and less than 1% each of fat and protein. In about 100 grams, you get like 18 calories and a moderate source of vitamin C. Yay. And tomatoes are pretty good for you. But I recommend getting them from a farm or the farmer's market and not from, the commercial grocery store where they will be flavorless. I wish I had like an echo thing where I could be like, flavorless, flavorless. Has anyone ever heard of La Tomatina? La Tomatina is a festival held in Valencia in Spain, specifically in a town called Buñol, and it's east of Spain, like 30 kilometers from the Mediterranean, where there is pretty much an hour-long tomato fight. This has been happening every year since 1945, except for this year because of COVID. But this started sometime in 1945 in August, where there's like a parade. Like August is like, there's like a lot of religious parades, and around this time there were like these big head, like paper mache figure parade, and these kids were like parading down with these musicians, and somebody's head got knocked off, and that person like flew into a rage and like started fighting with the people in the parade, like, who knocked off my head, like blah blah blah. And there was a market stall full of tomatoes nearby, just like in the cartoons when there's like a car chase or like a horse race, and like somebody like crashes into a cart of vegetables, or like in Avatar there's like the cart of cabbages. I'm watching that right now, actually. But in this case there was a cart of tomatoes, and people just started to pelt each other with tomatoes until the local law enforcement came to stop it. But since then, since 1945, this little town in Spain has been having an hour-long tomato fight every August. The way that they clean it up is fire trucks hose down the streets, and people run to a pool at the end of it, and the citric acid actually in the tomatoes helps wash the surfaces in the town. So it's kind of like a annual cleansing for them, which I think is very crazy. But yeah, they waste about 145,000 kilos of tomatoes. Let that sink in for a second. 145,000 kilos of tomatoes. That's insane. It does sound like fun, though. La Tomatina. It does sound like a pop star. I agree with you. These are the rules from the city council. Even though the event was canceled, these are the rules. Do not throw anything but tomatoes. Do not tear clothes. Squash tomatoes before throwing them to avoid hurting others. Keep a safe distance from trucks. Stop throwing tomatoes after the second starter pistol shot. Follow the directions of security staff. Only throw tomatoes to a target you can see to avoid hurting others. Do not throw tomatoes directly at buildings, and have a great time. Yeah, maybe it is a way to subsidize local tomato producers. Like, if we have scarcity of tomatoes, the price goes up. Maybe. Who knows? Okay, so actually cooking tomatoes. I have two books that we're gonna look through here. Kind of a beginning, intermediate, and advanced application of tomatoes. So the first one is from another Fade-On book. I'm going to show you so many Fade-On books. Vegetables from an Italian garden, season-by-season recipes. So there's a whole section on tomato here. I'll read it to you, my friends. No other vegetable in Italian cuisine is as ubiquitous and revered as the tomato. Whether it is the modest cherry variety or succulent, flavorsome plum tomatoes, this vegetable is quintessential to Italian cooking. Tomatoes go well with most ingredients, but classic partnerships are with basil, cheese, particularly mozzarella, and onion. Classics include tomato bruschetta, buffalo milk mozzarella caprese salad, and Tuscan tomato soup. Tomatoes can be made into flans, sauces, gratins, and risotto. Look for smooth, unblemished skins and fresh-looking green tops. Unripe tomatoes will ripen in a paper bag, like I said earlier, providing they have no signs of mold and are perfect for soups. Tomatoes are best stored in a bowl at room temperature. I say upside down on the counter, excuse me. To peel, cut across in the tops and put them in a heat-proof bowl. Pour in boiling water and let stand for 1 minute. Then drain and peel off the skins with a sharp knife. To seed it, cut it in half and scoop out the seeds with a teaspoon. In the garden, tomatoes grow best in full sun on well-drained, fertile soil. Grow a mix of bush varieties for small spaces and containers and large varieties for the vegetable patch. La 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 la. Wow, okay. And so we're going to jump to the tomato chapter here, and I'm going to read some highlights. I have some marked recipes that I want to try. Spicy tomato granita. So that is like a shaved ice. Cherry tomatoes stuffed with saffron rice. Oh, yum, yum, yum. Tomatoes with crescenza. Oh, crescenza is a type of cheese, like a taleggio. There's a pesto here with basil. Tomato bruschetta. Oh, what's your favorite tomato dish, guys? We have tomato mozzarella and basil flan. Tomato and basil tartare, kind of treating it like a ceviche. Tuscan tomato soup. Buffalo milk mozzarella caprese salad. Spaghetti amatriciana. Marinated cherry tomato salad. Tomato and basil risotto. Baked tomatoes in balsamic vinegar. Oh, that looks good, y'all. Look at that. Oh, I should change my screen if I'm looking at books with you. There we go. Look at that. Tomato roasted with balsamic. Ah! I found that tomato pairs really well with basil and thyme as well. Thyme is one of my favorite pairings there. Fried green tomatoes, pan-fried, orecchiette with tomato and ricotta, tomato gratin. Ooh, tomato pie. This is one that I haven't made yet. Look at that. Tomato pie. Tomatoes with provolone cheese also sounds good. And that's the end of that chapter. But yeah, that's from Vegetables from an Italian Garden. What else? So intermediate level, we've got the Book of Tapas. Also a Fedon book. By Simon and Inés Ortega. So, we've got the tomato bread, like I mentioned. Pan con tomate. So I said it's toasted bread. Rub a raw, like cut a garlic clove in half and rub that raw face on the toast. And then squish a juicy tomato on top. Cover that with olive oil. And then eat it with some sea salt. Or you can also put a slice of jamon on top or a little anchovy. We also have a tomato and mushroom tapa, which put tomatoes in a non-metallic bowl and season with salt and pepper, sprinkle with lemon juice, let marinate for an hour. Meanwhile, put the mushrooms in a separate non-metallic bowl, sprinkle with a little remaining lemon juice, let marinate for another hour. Oh, so it's just lemon marinated tomato and mushroom, drained, and then that's chopped and put on top of a toast. Yummy. Tomatoes filled with sardines is another one. And then molded eggs with tomato. So like hard-boiled eggs. Yum. Savory custards with tomato sauce. Damn. Flanecillos con salsa de tomate. Yum. Yum, yum, yum. Wonder if there's any photo here. Oh yeah, hard-boiled eggs with peas and red bell pepper here. Is there any photo of it? I want to show you a photo. No. No. This one has all the photos gathered in one section and not next to the recipes that are references. Ah, here. Savory custards with tomato sauce. Look at that. Beautiful. Oh, we didn't even talk about salsa. That's another thing. Salsa? Damn, dude. And then an advanced use of tomato, molecular gastronomy. I have the DOM, Rediscovering Brazilian Ingredients with Alex Atala. He has one usage here, which is green tomato gel. Using a centrifuge. Don't have a centrifuge. But basically it's a tomato gelée. Pretty. Another advanced way of using tomato with a centrifuge, actually, was from a cocktail bar called Angel Share here in New York. They juice tomatoes, strain it, get rid of all the solids, and then centrifuge so it gets rid of all that red pulp, and it becomes like a clear water. So tomato water in a cocktail was delicious. So it was like a martini, like a tomato martini with vodka, like ice cold vodka and like a little bit of basil oil. I died. It was so good. I know, no one has a centrifuge. They're like $600. Tomato and basil with vinegar and olive oil and balsamic. Yes. Gazpacho. These are all great dishes. Tomato sandwich with mayo, right? With Dukes. Tomato stuff with pork, salsa, marinara. Yeah. I like a marinara. You know what my dad likes? I actually disagree with him on this. Fun trivia. My dad used to be a saucier at an Italian restaurant in college. You can imagine a short Filipino man making Italian food, like, amazing. He would sneak a little sugar in the tomato sauce, which is a very Filipino thing. Like, I don't like sweet spaghetti sauce. Like, if you go get spaghetti at Jollibee, like the fast food restaurant, they have a very sweet tomato sauce, and I don't prefer that. I like mine very, very savory. Lots of parm, actually. Yeah. Great. I love this. So much tomato knowledge, friends, and so many ways to eat it. Let's get to my favorite section of the stream, which is where we're gonna pretend we're on Chopped. Oh, really? Japanese spaghetti is also sweet? I didn't know that. Let's name like 3 ingredients and mash them up together. In the chat, everybody pick an ingredient, and then we'll try to work together to figure out how they can be in a dish together. We can combine 2 ingredients or all 3 or whatever. It's just all about generating many good ideas. Right? Let's play. Meanwhile, I will put an egg on me. Let's do the hard-boiled egg. Plums. Shallots. Alright, we got plums and shallots so far. 1 more ingredient. Love it. I'm gonna drink a water while we wait. Need 1 more ingredient. I will pick one from the random wall. Okay. I don't know if you can see this. I have a random wall. Oh, squash. There we go. Okay, shallots, plums, and squash. Let's mash them up, friends. So shallots are a smaller, aromatic, milder onion, or like allium family. Plums are a stone fruit, very related to peaches, apricots, plumcots. Squash has many, many varieties. So there's acorn, there's spaghetti. We can play a lot with butternut and yellow squash. So all of these things can work together in many ways. So let's see. We can do pickled plums with shallots and tarragon. We can do roasted plums and squash together with shallots. Actually, just doing a whole roast pan of those with a little bit of torn oregano over the top would be really nice. We can do a squash puree with roasted plums on top and pickled shallots. We can cut the top off of a acorn squash, roast it, put a shallot soup inside, like a caramelized shallot soup inside, and finish it with like a plum oil. We can make plum sauce by combining it with like a sugar. Adding an artichoke. Oh god. Okay. We can grill artichokes. We can make a shallot mayonnaise to dip the artichoke leaves in. We can stuff the artichoke with plums. We can stuff the artichoke with squash. We can stuff the artichoke heart into the squash. We can, shallot and plum sauce on top of fried artichokes and squash flowers. Hell yeah. Ooh, shallot mayo sounds so good. Yes, it does. We can grill all these things. We can do grilled plums. We can do a grilled plum ice cream. Oh, a roasted squash ice cream sounds pretty good, actually. Butternut squash ice cream. Artichoke. How else do we cook artichokes? We can boil them, we can steam them, we can grill them. We can blend the artichoke hearts into a cream. Actually, blended artichoke heart and shallot cream puree with roasted squash sounds really good. Yeah. We can spiralize the squash, make it noodles, boil those, have like a, you know, gluten-free squash noodle. Using that because it was on Chopped last night. Nice. Did you know that the baby artichokes you can just shave whole? Like, you don't have to cut out the middle. So you can do like a baby artichoke salad with sliced plums and a shallot vinaigrette. Ooh, shallot vinaigrette is really good. With like champagne vinegar and tarragon. Yum. What else with artichokes? I actually haven't had artichokes in many different ways. Like, I just love a classic steamed artichoke and dipping it in mustard. Ooh, a shallot mustard. Ooh, you can make a plum and shallot mustard. It'd be a little sweet, but cool. Oh, plum mostarda. We can make a plum mostarda and dress the artichoke with that. Yum. Pickled artichoke hearts. You can do pickled squash. Though, you know, you don't really pickle starchy things like potatoes and squash, but you could do it if you cut it thin enough. Do I know Kathy McCord? No, I don't. I don't know Kathy. Sorry to say. Plums. So plums are also in Dr. Pepper. You can make a drink. That'd be funny. What if we made a cocktail out of these ingredients? Like a savory gin Gibson. I've had an onion Gibson before, so you could have a shallot Gibson with like a dried plum. Oh, prune juice. Yeah, you could do prune juice. You could do a prune simple syrup with like a gin shallot. Actually, that sounds really good. It's very summery. You could do a plum soda. We could take Dr. Pepper, basically. Right? But Dr. Pepper is plum-based. That's funny. Ooh, you could do like a plum sauce with orange zest and toss and like stir fry the summer squash like it was like chicken with plum sauce. Or like, yeah, ooh. Good idea. I like that. We haven't gone the dried route yet. So you can dehydrate shallots. You can dehydrate plums into chips. You can dehydrate squash. Actually, I've done really, really thinly sliced squash at a wedding once, and we roasted it in garlic oil and had that as a garnish for a salad. Like patty pan squash. We sliced it super, super thin, and they look like flowers. Very cute. Yeah, could do dried plum, dried squash, and like a fruit and nut mix, like a trail mix. It's pretty good. Shallot oil. Oh, she's a judge on grocery games. Oh, cool, cool, cool. You're in Santa Monica? I didn't realize that. Cool. I'm from California. I've only been there to that farmer's market once, though. I sound like her? I don't even know who she is. Kathy McCord. Whoa. I'll have to look her up. Fry thinly sliced shallots until they're crispy. Hell yeah. I used to buy a bucket of those from the Asian market. That's another thing you should pick up from the Asian market, like a bucket of fried shallots. I just garnish everything with it. Love it. I put it on burgers, like bacon burger with white cheddar. Just fried shallots. That's just my go-to. Like fried garlic or fried shallots, I'm just gonna finish it with that stuff and just sprinkle. So good. Man, those are all great ideas, friends. Thank you. I love this part of the stream because it just like jumpstarts my brain and like makes me think like, oh, what am I gonna have for dinner, you know? Well, great job, everybody. Those are all amazing ideas, and I hope I know, I'm so hungry too. I'm gonna eat dinner after this. So, next time on Attack the Pantry, I'll be back again Wednesday at 5 p.m. to talk about terrines, first of all, and then what else do you guys want to talk about? I'll happily take your suggestion here in the chat or on Twitter. You can @ me at Randwiches to suggest next week topics. So if there's an ingredient or a recipe or a cooking technique that you want to learn more about, like, let me know and I'll do the research and figure it out for you. And then I'll also be back on Sunday at 12 p.m. Eastern to talk about zines. Cherries. Let's talk about cherries. Yes, terrines and cherries so far. Oh, you want a list of things for me to get from the Asian market. You know what? Why don't I do that? Let's do list of suggested stuff to find at the Asian market. That's a great topic. Yeah, those are 3 great topics. Let's do it. Like pork floss, pork sun. Love that stuff. You know what? Everybody also tweet me or DM me your suggestions if you have input on what we should talk about from Asian markets as well. Because I sort of gravitate toward condiments and snacks. So if there's other things like noodles, like brands of noodle packs that you like, or nuts or teas, like those kinds of things, like send me your suggestions and we'll make a list together. Sounds fun. You knew we could be friends ever since you saw that waffle sandwich. Ah, LOL. True, true, true. True, true, true. Love it. Well, my friends, that's it for today. Reach out to me on Twitter at Randwiches if you have any more questions or want to talk before next week's stream. But I'll be back next Wednesday, 5 p.m. Have a great rest of your Wednesday and the rest of the week. I hope you are doing well and staying safe. Talk to you later, guys. Bye.